Hello, I am Julia Bushkova, and this video is dedicated to modern composers that plan or desire to compose for the instrument violin. So I'm going to briefly show you what to do or what not to do if you want your music to be really performed widely. What I notice happening a lot of times, that is, a piece of music is written, and let's say it's a piece of good music, but it is so difficult or maybe awkward that only one person, the dedicatee perhaps, or somebody who commissioned this, performs it, and then after that it's shelved forever and nobody else performs it. I think it's too bad. It shouldn't be happening. Many people should be able to play it. And let's say if you are not a violinist and you want to compose for violin, so this video is for you. Properties of the violin. First of all, violin can be played in two general big ways. One, arco with a bow, and the other, pizzicato. Right hand and left hand. The range of the violin is from the G, which will be G3, and the highest note on violin which is possible is A7, right there, so right where the fingerboard ends. Violin has 4 strings, and those are G, D, A, and E, and of course they're all perfect fifths. And each string has a different sound property and quality also, and character, I would say. And I will start with the lower string, the G. The interesting thing about all of our strings is there a range on each that overlaps with the neighboring string. On G, I can play the first 4 notes up to C. Now what's above it already can be played on D string as well, so that exists on both G and D. Now those notes, however, cannot exist on A string yet. However, starting from A, those 4 notes, of course, exist on A string as well. And do you hear how the timbre changes? And with that changes projection. I'm not sure if you can hear how projection changes because my microphone is so close. But believe me, every string that goes up allows more projection and more power. So once we get to the E on A string, of course, all the notes from that E and up are possible on E string, will be much brighter, the brightest string that we have. And here, of course, you can go to these notes, which on A string are still possible. Well, not maybe that A, but nevertheless, you don't want to use that there anyhow. So on E string, it's the longest usable string. You would use from E open until this A, which is A6, I guess, A6. And then after an A6, you can still use maybe to the upper D, but that's pretty much what should be the limit, because after that it's very small sounding. Okay, so those are properties of the string. Properties of sound, of violin sound, are, I would say, singing is the main thing. And then what else I'm doing right now, automatically I vibrate. So vibrato is a very big thing in our world. We vibrate tones, and you need to remember that open strings cannot do any vibrato at all, so it's very important for a lot of pieces. So we cannot end on E open because it only can sound like this. On A, we use sort of like, we violinists use kind of like fake vibrato, but it's not really vibrato. A little bit. The same for D and G, so basically no vibrato. How violin works in the ensemble. So violin is very compatible, of course, with all the string instruments, and it's we are used to hearing it with piano as well. But with piano, again, there are already certain things that one needs to remember. For instance, writing for the piano, accompanying violin, let's say, or perhaps several voices. It's very important not to put the violin notes into what is the best register for the piano. Now, in best register for the piano, it was probably from a little bit below the middle C and above middle C, maybe a couple octaves, like the most powerful, and of course the basses. With us, it's not the same. So the basses, which would be a G and A, while they have very rich and noble sound, they're not very projecting. So if you put these notes, which now I'm alone, so they sound pretty good, but if you put them in the context of piano chords, they're getting lost. And the same thing will be anything basically from open G to the F sharp or G on A string. All of that is not a good thing from here to here. Now, if you put us on E string, it's great. We will soar and sound really good. Another property of violin that I would like to mention would be harmonics. They play a rather big role in our world, and they're natural harmonics. And so forth, very different sounds. All of these were natural harmonics. Naturals are those that are produced just by lightly touching the string in appointed places, I should say, and getting this kind of fluty sound. And they're also artificial harmonics. Artificial harmonics are pretty much any note is possible with artificial harmonics when we depress one finger and lightly touch the other. So you can play scales that way or whatever you want to do. However, I would much recommend, if you plan to use harmonics, you need to really study. I'm not going to talk about this right now. It's a very big subject. So please go study. There are books about harmonics and how to use them and how they will sound and so forth. So it's a worthwhile study. The easiest way to find yourself on the violin fingerboard is to understand that we work in fifths. Just like our strings are tuned in fifths, every finger that you can put, for instance, first finger you can put on the same place on the other string, it will be another fifth, another fifth. Second finger, third finger, okay, and so forth. That is useful to know. Another thing that I would offer, that you would think of each string as its key. Again, we're talking about orientation on the fingerboard, okay? So if I'm on G, think G major scale and G minor scale. Okay, and then also, of course, chromatic scale. You can go a little bit even further. The same thing will be on D. Now, D is D major, D minor. Right? Up on A minor, let's say. Down will be A major. E will have the same thing, E major, E minor, and all of them have, of course, the range of chromatic scale, right? And also we really like to play chromatic scales, actually it's a good thing. So, or you can also shift up on E string and go up and up and up and up pretty high in chromatics. Chromatics are great, we love them. So as you could see, the most organic keys on violin are the keys of the open strings. So G, major and minor, D, major and minor, A, major and minor, and E, major and minor. Out of them, by far the preferred key is D. You probably know that most major fantastic major concertos that are written for us. They're all in key of D, either D major or D minor. And that is for a good reason, because then you have the subdominant will be your G major, dominant will be your A major, and it's all related again on open strings. The least preferable out of 4 will be actually E major, because it has more limits. In general, what you want to know is that violinists absolutely abhor flats and love sharps. Yes, we have a love affair with sharps. So, but however, even with sharps, you don't want to go with too many sharps. 4 sharps is good, 5 sharps is not desirable. So we don't want to go into the B major, but B minor is of course fine. Flats, is C major okay? C major is okay. F major is okay. D minor, of course, and then B flat major, okay, and G minor, yes. And then E flat, we can live with that. But don't go any further into the flat land, please. We do have sort of a almost visceral reaction. When we have like a double flat, we want to faint. When we have the double sharp, we can live with that. This brings us to chords and double stops, intervals. So chords are not desirable for the violin, simply because violin is a linear instrument, one voice instrument, and chords are for vertical writing. So you need to know that if you write as the chords, most likely, in most cases, we will have to break them. We call that breaking. So it will sound like this, and not in one sound like it would be, for instance, on the piano. Also on the piano, it's very easy to play ta-ta-ta-ta-tam like these chords. On the violin, it's not easy at all. It's awfully hard. We have to practice a lot, and we won't do it. Double stops. Double stops, there's one that I need to mention specifically, and that is a taboo interval, and that is a fifth. Okay? Fifths are unreliable. They sound weak, and a lot of times out of tune, especially if you go from the bottom, which could be still okay right here, but if you go up, that's what you will get in here. The finger goes between the strings, the sound is weak, fuzzy, and out of tune. So fifths are really out, should be out. Fourths are okay, but better to be used very sparingly, and you have to know the context of how to use them. Okay, they're possible, but don't write many fourths one after another. It will be most likely unplayable or very, very awkward. And the best intervals to use are octaves, thirds, and sixths. In combination of those, usually within what we call one position. And I do think that you will have to study what our positions are. Our positions are always determined by an octave. So you have here, that's called one position. So in that we can play. So those are pretty much double stops that are possible in this position. Octaves are exception because they are positions and they can move along. And so forth. So they actually move, and with them move the other double stops that live there. Okay? So now we go to the topic of expression, more expression on violin, and doing it by using different bowings. We're very big on bowings, very big topic for us. So when and if you know how you want that to sound, for instance, you have a passage, and if you just write those notes for us, we will play it like that. Now, let's say you wanted this passage to sound like this. In that case, that bowing will be spiccato, and you will put dots over the notes, and it's not staccato. It could be shorter. If you want it shorter, you could actually write the word staccato and put dots, and that will give us that way to play them. You can also, of course, use the up bow staccato. Now, in our violin world, when we use just the word staccato, we don't mean short sound. We mean this bowing. specific bowing, how we played it. So if you don't want it, just write the word staccato and don't put any slurs in there. However, big thing is legato and connected or slightly disconnected sounds. So we can sound very connected like this, which for most ears sounds legato, but for us it is not legato, it's called détaché, because I change the bow on every note. So that is indicated in the score by not putting anything, just every note, and so that's how we will play it. Or like this, which is even much smoother. So if you know you want this quality, then you put slurs over that. If you don't know much about bowings, just put the word legato over it and we will figure out which to use. We also, of course, can use combinations of one and the other. And that gives you still very connected sound, but combination of more and less connected. So now at the end, I would like to present you with a number of don'ts. And I want to reiterate that I'm speaking for majority of performers. Of course, there will always be some that specialize in the music that I'm going to mention right now, but those will be far and few in between. So if you want your music to be performed by wide audience, so to speak, or wide variety of performers, the following don'ts are the ones that you want to know. Number one, do not write extended techniques. We hate them, really, those extended techniques. Don't write too many notes. You might not know this, these too many notes are very complicated, and a lot of violinists will not want to dedicate hours and hours of practicing on unknown repertoire just to see whether it works. Okay? I would also stay away from writing very complicated rhythms. You know, those found in some music where you look at this and you just want to wake up from a bad dream. And the last probably would be, don't write the music that is too difficult to play, too virtuosic. For instance, we have wonderful concerti in the repertoire, such as Busoni concerto, or Dohnani concerto, or Moshkovsky concerto. We also have a number of sonatas, really wonderful music, for instance, by Mettner, and they're not performed. They're not performed almost at all. Once in a while, there will be somebody who bravely will approach one and actually perform and record it usually, and we're happy that recording exists. Why does it happen? Because it could be gorgeous music from the beginning, and we go and we enjoy the music all the way through, by the way, and then suddenly there will be some one passage or two that completely wipe out 90% of performers. 10% would be able to do it. But out of that 10%, how many would want to do it? That's another story. And therefore, we have pieces of music just sit on the shelf, and those are very well-known composers. Another thing, for instance, when I was speaking about some certain intervals earlier, for instance, another interval to stay away from are tritones, for instance. If you take a sonata by Robert Kahn, which I actually recorded, the first sonata, in the first movement in the development of that, there are a bunch of tritones. They were very hard to learn for most people to play in tune. So the tritones, one after another, it's an awkward affair on violin, which is very easy to play on the piano. So those are tricks that you want to remember, and things that you want to avoid actually if you want to write music that is going to be loved and performed by wide variety of violinists. And so the last piece of advice I would give you, if you are not a violinist and you're writing for violin, with all the knowledge that you will acquire from books or from this video, you absolutely must consult a friend, acquaintance who is a violinist. Ask them to go through certain points of your piece, ask their opinion, ask if it's playable, and then ask if it's comfortably playable. Okay? So playability itself, that it's possible to do on violin, doesn't mean that it will be comfortable to do. comfortable enough at least to play it, let's say, in up tempo or in fast tempo or in whatever your context might be. So your friend will help you out. I hope this video has been helpful, and you will like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and I will see you all later.